So paper or plastic? That's the question, right? A plastic carrier bag costs 3 grams of CO2 equivalent when it's very light variety, and it does matter. Of course, its durability will depend on the strength of the plastic bag as well. And of course, it always depends on how many times you recycle it and how good the recycling or reuse it, and or whether it's recycled in the place where you live, and actually how good the recycling system actually is. It turns out that in many places trash is separated and collected, but oftentimes not completely recycled, but trashed in landfills and so on. Is plastic a hydrocarbon and can stay in the ground for a long time even if it doesn't biodegrade? Theoretically, yes, but returning the hydrocarbon back to land, but the amount of waste keeps increasing and it keeps washing into rivers and oceans, ends up in cattle eating it, all sorts of pigs and animals eating it, fish eating little micro nodules of microplastic, and so on and so forth, right? So 3 grams CO2 equivalent for a very lightweight variety, 10 grams CO2 equivalent for a standard disposable supermarket bag, 50 grams CO2 equivalent for a heavyweight reusable variety. Again, reusable doesn't mean you everybody reuses it as many times as it should be, could be, and so on. So obviously we have to be careful about all those details. So that's 2.5 kilograms or 5.5 pounds per year if you use 5 standard bags per week, about the same as 1 large cheeseburger. So cheeseburger is obviously beef is the most environmentally intensive food per calorie, right? You feed the cow so much food, cows belch methane, which is bad already, and then the amount of steak you will extract or amount of edible food you will extract out of a cow compared to the environmental resources used to produce that product, food. Shouldn't think of cows as food, but nonetheless, there we are. It's environmentally very damaging, so at some point we will look at the environmental footprint of different food products like grains, beef, lamb, chicken, and so on. The question of paper or plastic is much more complicated because paper can be very intensive. We will visit that in the carbon footprints from 10 to 100 grams. So paper is not necessarily benign unless it's reused paper that's being used to produce a carry bag or cloths, right? There is no silver bullet. That's the message I would want to give you. This is from a report which looked at the general structure for all carrier bag scenarios assessed in this life cycle analysis study. End of life refers to 3 different end of life options: incineration, recycling, and reuse as waste bin bag. So what do we do in life cycle analysis is you look at it end to end. Production of carrier bag material itself, production of packaging material, manufacture of the carrier bag, and then the treatment residues where the plastic is not just pure plastic, it's treated after production. It's transported and to the place where it's going to be used. Either there is a collection, transport, and end-of-life packaging, or there's a collection and end-of-life carrier bag. Okay, so the net carbon footprint depends on making this kind of analysis, but much more importantly, it depends on the environmental indicator that you are focusing on. Carrier bags providing the lowest environmental impacts for all the environmental indicators considered. The order in which the bags are listed corresponds to the ranking of their life cycle analysis results, resulting from the lowest impact. Only the 3 lowest only the 3 lowest scoring bags are listed. The results refer to the reference flow provided in another table that I'm not going to get into, but this gives you a very good sense of how complicated the issue is for an individual, and that the system has to help people make the decision without them having to do this much work, right? A mother with a child is not going to worry about these things. Maybe she will start the day wanting to worry about it. By midday, she's had enough work to do that she cannot track everything. Willpower is a limited resource, especially if you are poor. Poor people have many more choices to make and much more difficult choices to make, so these kind of issues cannot be put on their head. Environmental indicators used are climate change, ozone depletion, human toxicity, cancer effects, human toxicity, non-cancer effects, photochemical ozone formation, ionizing radiation, particulate matter, PM 2.5 that gets airborne and makes you sick, terrestrial acidification, change in CO2 and acidification of the water, which harms many species, terrestrial eutrophication, where nutrients are increasing and causing problems of harmful algal blooms and pathogens, freshwater eutrophication, marine eutrophication, big problem as well, ecosystem toxicity. Resource depletion toxicity has a definition which causes harm to humans beyond a certain threshold. Resource depletion, like fossil fuels, resource depletion abiotic, fossil fuels are hydrocarbons. Water resource depletion, production always includes water resources. So the carrier bags providing the lowest impacts for each of these environmental indicator can be surprisingly difficult. For climate change, paper which is unbleached or biopolymer and LDPE can be get the lowest scores. Ozone depletion, LDPE is better. Human toxicity, paper unbleached and LDPE. Composite, PP and low density polymer polyethylene. So you can look up all these things. So the point is that it's not always just simple paper or plastic. It is many complicated questions like what is the environmental indicator that you're worrying about? What are the behavioral issues involved? What are the systemic issues in terms of collection, transport, end-of-life packaging, or end-of-life conversion to carrier bag, and so on. So I would say you worry about using what you want to use, but recycling and getting disposing it off properly, not trashing the neighborhood or not throwing it into water bodies, making sure it's not degrading and becoming microplastic and getting into fish, or that cows are eating it, birds are eating it. There is evidence that fish in the ocean smell the polyaromatic chemicals include that come with the plastics, and they think it's food and they eat it. In India, cows eat a lot of plastic. No analysis has been done, but we know cows have additional cows rely a lot on odor for deciding what is food and what is not, and it is possible that the plastic waste that is strewn all over is also got the smell that makes the cows think that it's food, and they are also seen eating cardboards. And there is a lot of food packaging which is plastic, and then chips and so on that are eaten and just thrown away. So all these details matter. So you do your best, and you keep in mind that things are complicated, so no need to feel guilty all the time, but good to be aware of the details of the processes and try to do your homework if you are so inclined. But if you are not a person who worries about it a lot, you have to decide what is your threshold for worrying about the environment around you as well as the environment for the whole world. Okay, we'll have to leave it there, but I'll come back in the next podcast and show the details of plastic pollution. It is obviously a massive problem, and there is some good data on how plastic makes it into landfills and oceans, and how it's being treated, wasted, disposed of by various countries, and so on. So there's some useful data that one can look at to get a sense of just how big this problem is. So there is CO2 emissions and global warming, and then there is plastic pollution, which are both a menace. So we will look at that.